Greetings to you. I'm Dr. Pearl John and welcome to the Other 167. We continue our series on tough questions and tough answers, and today we focus on the theme struggling with doubt. Here's why you might be closer to faith than you think. When faith feels fragile, what do we do? Have you ever felt like your faith is shaking, like doubt is creeping into the corners of your heart, making you question what you thought was unshakable? If yes, know this. Doubt isn't the end. It's a doorway to deeper faith. The Bible is full of real narratives of people wrestling with doubt. Thomas, the disciple, hesitated to believe in Jesus' resurrection until he saw the scars. We read that in John 20 and 24 to 29. Abraham laughed when God promised him a child in his old age. We read that in Genesis 17 and 17. Even John the Baptist, the man who heralded the coming of Jesus, sent messengers to ask Jesus, "Are you the one who is to come, or should we expect someone else?" We read that in Matthew 11, 2 and 3. These stories remind us that doubt isn't the enemy of faith. It's often the spark that pushes us to pursue the deeper truths of God's love and promises. And today, we'll explore 3 truths to hold on to when doubt strikes and discover how to turn uncertainty into an unshakable faith. First, doubt isn't the end. It's a doorway to deeper faith. Mark chapter 9 verse 24, a desperate father brought his son to Jesus for healing. And overwhelmed by his circumstances and the thought that his son's suffering might not end, he cried, "I believe, help my unbelief." His faith wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And it was enough for Jesus to step into the situation and perform a miracle. This verse reminds us that God doesn't require perfect faith. Instead, He invites us to bring our doubts to Him, to wrestle, to cry out, and lay them at His feet. Doubt is not the dead end of faith. It's often the divine doorway to a breakthrough. Think about times when you doubted. Maybe it was during a health crisis, a financial setback, or a broken relationship. Instead of running away from God in those moments, imagine running toward Him with your questions. And the act of bringing doubt into light is where faith begins to grow stronger. There's a powerful modern story of a mother who doubted God's presence after losing her child. She admitted her anger, her questions, and her deep sense of abandonment. Instead of pushing God away, she wrote down her doubts in letters to Him every night. And over time, as she poured out her pain and her pathos, she began to feel God's comforting presence, an amazing assurance, not in answers, but in His presence. Today, she says, "I still don't understand why, but I know He is with me." When you bring your doubts into God, they don't become dead ends, they become divine opportunities for breakthrough. Just like the Father in Mark 9:24, God transforms honest doubts into deeper trust. Doubt isn't a barrier, it's a bridge to the miracle waiting on the other side. Secondly, faith isn't the absence of doubt. It's acting despite it. In Matthew 14:22 to 33, Peter sees Jesus walking on water and steps out of the boat toward him. For a moment, Peter is defying the impossible and walking by faith and taking step after step. But as soon as he notices the waves, fear grips him and doubt takes over and he begins to sink. What does Jesus do? He doesn't scold Peter. Instead, he reaches out and pulls him up gently and says, "You of little faith, Why did you doubt? This story illustrates a powerful truth. Faith isn't about living without doubt, it's about taking steps toward God in the face of it. Peter walked because he acted in obedience to Jesus' call, not because he had perfect confidence. Many of us are like Peter, stepping into the unknown situations, whether it's a career leap, moving to a new city, or dealing with a difficult relationship. Faith doesn't eliminate the waves of fear, but it empowers us to move forward anyway. Consider an entrepreneur starting a business during a pandemic. Everyone around her told her it was impossible, that the market was unstable and doomed to fail. Yet she felt a nudge from God to proceed. And despite her doubts, she took those small baby steps, building a plan, praying for wisdom, and trusting God each day. And today, that business isn't just surviving, it's thriving. She admits, I doubted almost every step of the way, but acting in faith taught me that success is more about trust in God than in myself. Faith is not about flawless trust, it's about fear-filled steps forward. Like Peter walking on water, your faith grows when you move in obedience despite the waves of doubt. Faith is stepping into the storm, trusting the one who walks above it. And thirdly, God meets you in your questions, not just in your certainty. Thomas is often labeled the doubter in John 20:24-29 because he demanded to see and touch Jesus' wounds before he could believe in the resurrection. Yet when Jesus appears to Thomas, he doesn't chastise him. Instead, he offers Thomas exactly what he needed to overcome his doubt. He said, put your finger here, see my hands, stop doubting and believe. Now, Thomas's story reminds us that God doesn't wait for perfect certainty before he draws near to us. He meets us right in the middle of our questions and invites us into relationship even when we are unsure. The beauty of the gospel is that Jesus doesn't reject us in our searching. Instead, he says, come close, seek me, and you will find me. I once spoke to a young woman who had spent years grappling with faith. She questioned God's goodness because of tragedies in her life that came blow after blow after blow and severely impaired her, and she couldn't find answers that satisfied her. One day a friend invited her to a small prayer group. Hesitantly she agreed to attend, and in that room, amidst her skepticism, she felt an overwhelming sense of God's amazing, abounding love. And she said, I still have questions, but I've realized I don't need all the answers to know He's real. Thomas didn't lose his way because of doubt. He found God in the middle of it. Your doubts don't push God away, they draw Him closer. God doesn't wait for perfect faith to show up. He meets you where your questions are. Doubt doesn't destroy faith, it refines it. Here's the truth. Doubt isn't the opposite of faith. It's the spark that strengthens it. Think about a fire. To burn brightly, it needs oxygen, but that oxygen can also feed sparks of fear and doubt. The key is this: which will you fan into flame? As you wrestle with questions, know that God is with you. He is not afraid of your doubts, nor is He offended by your questions. Instead, He invites you to walk with Him through them, knowing that faith thrives not in certainty, but in trust. Remember this: doubt isn't the enemy of faith, it's the starting line. Bring your questions, step forward, and watch your faith thrive in the unknown. Faith grows not in the absence of doubt, but in the presence of a God who welcomes it. This is Pearl John signing off the Other 167. Thank you for watching the Other 167. We continue our series of tough questions and tough answers next week. Until then, have a wonderful weekend and a fabulous week ahead. God bless.